My son cut me off for 13 years until he found out I was a new millionaire. Then, he showed up at my door with his bags and his wife. As your son, I'm entitled to some of this. We're moving in. You have all this extra space anyway. I smiled, finally ready to do what I should have done a long time ago. The audacity hit me like a freight train. Kevin stood on my doorstep with his designer luggage. And that entitled smirk I remembered all too well. As your son, I'm entitled to some of this. He repeated, gesturing toward my house like he already owned it. We're moving in. You have all this extra space anyway. 13 years of silence, and this was his grand reunion speech. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. I suppose I should explain how we got here, how my own son could stand at my door, after more than a decade of treating me like I was already dead, demanding a piece of the fortune he just learned about. But first, let me tell you what happened next, because some moments are worth savoring. I smiled at Kevin and his wife, Nora, who was hanging back like she half expected me to start throwing things. Smart woman, well, I said, keeping my voice steady as granite. Isn't this interesting? Kevin's confidence faltered just for a second. He hadn't expected calm. He'd been expecting the desperate, grateful mother he'd abandoned all those years ago. Mom, we've been thinking, he began. But I lifted my hand. Kevin, darling, I said, using the same tone I'd used when he was 5 and had scribbled on the living room wall with permanent marker. Before you say another word, there's something you should know about your mother. I paused, watching his face carefully. I've learned a lot in 13 years, especially about family who only show up when there's money involved. Nora finally stepped forward, her smile as fake as her designer handbag. Barbara, we know there's been some distance, she said sweetly. But family is family, right? We want to rebuild our relationship. Rebuild? I laughed, and it felt good. Really good. Honey, you can't rebuild something that was deliberately demolished. I looked between them to vultures circling what they assumed was easy prey. But please, come in. Let's talk about relationships. Let's talk about entitlement. Let's talk about exactly what you think you deserve from me. As they wheeled their suitcases past me into the foyer, I caught Kevin's reflection in the hallway mirror. For just a moment, he looked uncertain. Good. Because what he was about to learn would shake that arrogance right out of him. The real question wasn't whether I'd let them stay. The real question was whether they'd want to stay once they realized exactly who they were dealing with. This place is smaller than I expected, Nora muttered, her eyes already calculating square footage and resale value. She had that look women get when they're mentally redecorating someone else's house. Kevin was doing the same thing, except he was appraising everything like he was already planning the estate sale. If they thought they were dealing with the same broken woman who'd once begged for scraps of their attention, they were in for a surprise that would curl their perfectly styled hair. I led them to the living room, the same room where Kevin had delivered his parting shot all those years ago. Sit, I said, gesturing to the sofa. Let's catch up. The irony wasn't lost on me. This was probably the first time in his adult life that Kevin had actually followed my instructions. We heard about your good fortune, Nora began, clearly the designated spokesperson for this little expedition. Kevin's been worried about you, haven't you, honey? Kevin nodded with the enthusiasm of a man who had rehearsed this in the mirror. I have, Mom. When I heard about the lottery, I thought you shouldn't be dealing with all that money alone. It's dangerous. People might try to take advantage. I almost choked on my coffee. Take advantage? I repeated slowly. You mean like showing up uninvited after 13 years of silence? Demanding a place to live and access to money you had no part in earning? That's not what this is, Kevin said quickly, though his eyes darted away. This is about family responsibility. About making sure you're protected. Protected. I set my cup down with deliberate care. Kevin, the last time we spoke, you told me I was an embarrassment to your new life. You said successful people don't drag their baggage around, and I was your baggage. Those were your exact words. The color drained from his face. Nora's fake smile flickered like a dying light bulb. That was different, he mumbled. I was young, stressed about the business. You were 32, I interrupted. Old enough to know that words have consequences. Old enough to understand that some doors, once closed, don't automatically reopen just because circumstances change. Nora jumped in then, her voice honey sweet with calculated concern. Barbara, we all say things we regret when we're under pressure. What matters is that we're here now, ready to be a family again, ready to be a family. That was rich, coming from the same woman who had helped orchestrate my exile from their lives. I looked at the two of them sitting in my living room, and for the first time in years, I felt something unexpected: complete control. They needed something from me, which meant, for the first time in our relationship, I held all the cards. Tell me, I said, leaning back in my chair, exactly how much of my good fortune do you think you're entitled to? Kevin and Nora exchanged that look married couples share when they're about to tag team someone. I'd seen it before back when they were systematically cutting me out of their lives. The difference was, this time, I recognized it for what it was, a strategy meeting in real time. It's not about entitlement, Kevin said, trying for sincerity but landing somewhere near pathetic. It's about family obligation. About making sure this money doesn't change you or make you vulnerable to the wrong people. The wrong people, I repeated slowly. You mean people like my own son and daughter-in-law, who disappeared the moment they decided I wasn't useful anymore? Nora's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something sharp and calculating underneath. Barbara, we understand you're hurt, she said carefully, but we're talking about your future. Your security. This money could last the rest of your life if it's managed properly, I echoed. By whom, you too? The same people who couldn't even manage to send me a birthday card for over a decade? Kevin shifted uncomfortably. We've been busy building our lives, our careers. We had to focus on our priorities, and now I'm a priority again. How convenient. I stood and walked to the window, looking out at my garden. Tell me about these lives you've been building. This focus on priorities. I'm curious how that's been working out for you. The silence stretched long enough behind me that I knew I'd struck a nerve. When I turned, Kevin was staring at his hands as if they held the secrets of the universe. We've had some setbacks, Nora admitted, her voice tighter now. The market's been challenging. Kevin's consulting business has been slower than expected. Setbacks? I nodded. Is that what we're calling it? Because from what I've heard, yes. I do still have friends in this town. Your setbacks involve maxed out credit cards, a second mortgage, and a business that exists mostly on paper. Kevin's head snapped up. How do I know things, Kevin? I asked, answering his unspoken question. You cut me out of your life, not out of this town. People talk. They've been talking for years. I sat back down, savoring the way both of them seemed to shrink into the sofa. They told me about the failed partnerships, the bad investments, the lifestyle you couldn't actually afford. They also told me something interesting about why you really ended our relationship. 13 years ago, Nora's face went pale. What do you mean? I mean the real reason you both decided I was an embarrassment. It wasn't about success. It wasn't about baggage, or any of that nonsense you fed me. I smiled and it felt like the first genuine smile I'd had in years. It was about the inheritance you thought was coming from your father's wealthy uncle. The one who made it very clear he didn't approve of people who couldn't take care of their own mothers. The look on Kevin's face told me everything I needed to know. Bingo, you threw me away. I continued. Because you thought Uncle Robert would leave you his money if you proved you were independent, successful, unencumbered by family obligations. I leaned forward. So tell me, how did that work out for you? Kevin's face cycled through several shades of red before settling on a sickly gray. Nora, to her credit, tried to maintain her composure, but I could see her frantically recalculating whatever plan they'd hatched in the car. Uncle Robert left his money to the animal shelter, Kevin whispered. Every penny? I asked, my satisfaction impossible to hide. Turns out he had very strong opinions about people who abandoned their elderly parents for money. Who would have thought? Nora found her voice first. That's ancient history. Barbara, what matters is the future. What matters is families supporting each other through difficult times, families supporting each other. I rolled the words around like wine I was tasting. That's fascinating coming from you. Remind me, Nora, when exactly did you start considering me family? Because I distinctly remember you referring to me as Kevin's burden at your housewarming party. She flinched. You weren't supposed to hear that, but I did, along with several other enlightening comments about how much better your lives would be once you dealt with the mother situation. I stood again, this time moving to the mantel where I kept my family photos. Every one of them was from before Kevin's marriage. I spent 13 years wondering what I'd done wrong. 13 years thinking I'd somehow failed as a mother. I picked up a photo of Kevin at his college graduation, his arm around me, both of us beaming. But I didn't fail, did I? I raised a son who was kind, thoughtful, generous. The failure was what happened after he met you. That's not fair, Kevin protested weakly. Fair? I turned to face them. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been a conversation before you cut off all contact. Fair would have been honesty about your motivations. Fair would have been treating your mother like a human being instead of a liability to be managed. We made mistakes, Nora said, her voice sharp with growing desperation. But we're here now. We want to make things right, I repeated. With my money. It's not about the money, Kevin insisted, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? Then let's do a little experiment. I walked to my purse and pulled out my checkbook. Let's say I write you a check right now for $50,000, a generous gift, to help with those setbacks you mentioned. Would you take it and leave? Their eyes lit up like Christmas morning. The answer was written all over their faces before Kevin even opened his mouth. We couldn't accept such a large amount, he said, though he was already mentally spending it. Maybe we could work out some kind of arrangement. A loan, perhaps? A loan, I echoed. Of course. And I suppose you'd want to discuss the terms of this loan while living in my house, eating my food and helping yourselves to my hospitality. Well, we are family, Nora said, as if that explained everything. Yes, I agreed. We are family. And that's exactly why what happens next is going to hurt so much. I closed the checkbook with a snap that echoed through the room like a gunshot. Kevin and Nora both flinched. I realized they'd been holding their breath, waiting for me to start writing. The thing about family, I said, settling back into my chair like a queen on her throne, is that it goes both ways: loyalty, support, love. These aren't one-way streets you can travel only when it's convenient, Mom. We know we haven't been perfect, Kevin started. Perfect? I laughed, and it came out sharp enough to cut glass. Kevin, perfect would have been calling me on Mother's Day. Perfect would have been including me in your lives instead of hiding me like a shameful secret. What you two did wasn't imperfect, it was calculated cruelty. Nora shifted forward on the sofa, her desperation starting to show round the edges. Barbara, we're willing to acknowledge our mistakes. We want to build a better relationship going forward. Build a better relationship. I repeated thoughtfully. Starting when? Starting the moment you heard about my lottery win? How remarkably convenient that your desire for family reconciliation coincided exactly with my change in financial circumstances. Kevin had the grace to look ashamed, but Nora was made of sterner stuff. People change, Barbara. People grow. We're not the same people we were 13 years ago. You're right about that, I agreed. You're not the same people. You're older. You're broker. And you're more desperate. But fundamentally, you're exactly who you've always been. I stood and walked to the window again, not because I needed the view, but because I wanted them to sweat while I spoke. You want to know what I did with my time these past 13 years? While you were building your important lives and prioritizing your careers? Neither of them answered, but I could feel their attention like heat on my back. I learned things. I took classes. I read books. I made new friends. I discovered that I'm actually quite intelligent when I'm not being told I'm a burden. I turned to face them. I also learned about investing, about financial planning, about protecting assets from people who might try to take advantage. Kevin's face went carefully blank. What do you mean? I mean, I didn't just win the lottery and stuff the money in a mattress, Kevin. I hired professionals. Good ones. The kind of professionals who specialize in protecting wealthy people from family members who might have questionable motivations. You hired lawyers, Nora said, her voice flat, among others. I hired financial advisors, estate planners, even a private investigator. I smiled at their horrified expressions. You'd be amazed what a motivated person can learn about someone's financial situation when they have the resources to find out. You investigated us? Kevin's voice cracked on the last word. I investigated everyone, Kevin, friends, distant relatives, charitable organizations, investment opportunities. When you suddenly have significant wealth, you learn very quickly that everyone wants something from you. I walked back to my chair but didn't sit down. The difference is, most people are honest about their motivations. Nora's mask was gone now, replaced by something harder, colder, more calculating. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying that showing up here with your suitcases, demanding space in my home and access to my money after 13 years of treating me like I was already dead was a mistake. Finally, I sat, taking my time to smooth my skirt, pick up my coffee cup, and meet both of their eyes with perfect calm. I'm saying that if you think I'm the same woman you discarded all those years ago, you're about to be very disappointed. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire. Kevin looked like he might be sick. Nora looked like she was calculating escape routes. But I wasn't done with them yet. Not even close. The grandfather clock in the hallway chimed 3 times. We'd been sitting there for over an hour. Time flies when you're watching people's carefully constructed plans crumble in real time. So, I said, setting down my empty cup, let's talk about what you really want. Not the family reunion nonsense. Not the concern for my well-being. Let's have an honest conversation about why you're really here. Kevin opened his mouth, probably to deliver another rehearsed speech about family and concern, but I held up my hand. Before you answer, let me share some of the interesting information my investigators uncovered. I reached into the drawer of my side table and pulled out a manila folder. Did you know that people's financial records become quite accessible when you know where to look? And when you have the right professionals asking the questions? Nora's eyes locked on the folder like it was a coiled snake ready to strike. For instance, I continued, opening the file. I learned that you've been living beyond your means for nearly 5 years now. That consulting business Kevin claims is just experiencing a slow period? It hasn't had a legitimate client in 8 months. Kevin's face went white. How could you possibly know that? The same way I know about the 3 maxed out credit cards, the loan you took against your car, the second mortgage on your house that you're already 2 months behind on. I pulled out a sheet of paper. The same way I know you've been borrowing money from Nora's parents, telling them it's for business expansion when really it's just to keep the lights on. You had no right, Nora whispered. But there was no real anger in it, only the hollow sound of someone who'd been caught. No right? I laughed, genuinely amused. Honey, I had every right the moment you decided to show up at my door making demands. Due diligence, they call it in the business world. Something you might have learned if either of you had ever actually run a successful business. Kevin slumped in his chair like a deflated balloon. We're in trouble, okay? We're in real trouble. But that doesn't change the fact that you're my mother. That has to count for something. It does count for something, I agreed. It counts for the reason I'm going to give you one chance. Exactly one. To be honest with me. To drop the act, stop the manipulation, and tell me exactly what you need and why. They looked at each other, some kind of silent communication passing between them. Finally, Kevin straightened, lifted his head, and met my eyes. We're going to lose everything. He said quietly, the house, the car's probably Nora's parents' money too. We owe about $300,000 and we have no way to pay it back. $300,000? I repeated. That's quite a hole you've dug yourselves into. We made bad investments, Nora added quickly. Kevin's business partner embezzled most of their capital and disappeared. By the time we figured out what happened, it was too late. For the first time since they'd arrived, they sounded like they were actually telling the truth. It didn't make me sympathetic, but it did make me curious. And you thought showing up here with demands and suitcases was your best strategy for getting help? We thought. Kevin hesitated, choosing his words carefully. We thought that if we presented it as a family reunion, as wanting to spend time with you, it might be easier than admitting we need money. Easier? I asked, for whom? Kevin had the grace to look ashamed for us. We thought it would be easier for us. Finally, a moment of actual honesty. Almost refreshing. Well, I said, closing the folder and setting it aside. Now we're getting somewhere. 300,000, I repeated, letting the number hang in the air like smoke from a house fire. That's quite an accomplishment. Most people take decades to accumulate that kind of debt. Kevin winced. We know how it sounds, do you? Because it sounds like to people who made a series of catastrophically bad decisions and are now looking for someone else to pay for them. I leaned back in my chair. Tell me about this business partner who supposedly embezzled your money. Marcus Williams, Nora said quickly. He was Kevin's college roommate. They started the consulting firm together 5 years ago. Marcus Williams, I repeated, pulling out my phone. Funny thing about having good investigators, Kevin, they tend to be thorough. I scrolled through my notes. Marcus Williams didn't embezzle anything. Marcus Williams discovered that his business partner was funneling company money into personal expenses and gambling debts. He reported it to the authorities and dissolved the partnership to protect himself. The silence in my living room was so complete I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. That's not what happened, Kevin said weakly, isn't it? Because according to the police report, yes. There's a police report you've been under investigation for business fraud for the past 8 months. The district attorney just hasn't decided whether to press charges yet. Nora's face had gone the color of old newspaper. How do you know about police reports? The same way I know you've been telling your parents Kevin has a rare medical condition that requires expensive treatment. The same way I know you've borrowed $50,000 from 3 different relatives. Using 3 different sob stories, I set my phone down carefully. You two aren't just broke. You're con artists. We're not criminals, Kevin protested, but his voice lacked conviction. Really? What would you call lying to your family about having cancer to get money? What would you call embezzling from your own business? What would you call showing up here after 13 years with a sob story designed to manipulate me into supporting your fraudulent lifestyle? For the first time since they'd walked in, I saw genuine fear in their eyes. Good, fear was honest. We never meant for it to go this far, Nora whispered, but it did go this far. And now you're here, in my house, asking me to bail you out of the consequences of your own choices. I stood and walked to the window. Here's what's going to happen next. Behind me, I could feel them both holding their breath, waiting for whatever ultimatum I was about to deliver. The afternoon sun streamed through my kitchen window, lighting up the dust motes dancing in the air. Such a peaceful scene for such an explosive moment. You're going to pack up your suitcases, I said without turning around. And you're going to leave my house. But before you do, we're going to have a conversation about honesty and consequences. Mom, Please, Kevin started. I'm not finished. I turned to face them. Panic hovered in their eyes, you see. The interesting thing about hiring investigators is that you learn all sorts of unexpected information. For instance, I learned that I wasn't the only family member you cut ties with 13 years ago. Kevin's Adam's apple bobbed like a fishing lure. What do you mean? Kevin asked. I mean your Aunt Sarah, remember her, my sister? The one who helped pay for your college textbooks. Who sent you birthday money every year until you suddenly stopped returning her calls? Nora shot Kevin a look that could have stripped paint. It turns out, I continued, that Sarah tried to reach out to you multiple times after you cut me off. She was worried about me, wanted to understand what had happened. And you told her to mind her own business and blocked her number. We were establishing boundaries. Nora said defensively, boundaries? I nodded. Is that what you call it when you find out a family member might leave you money in their will? So you keep in just enough contact to make sure you're still mentioned then disappear again? Kevin's face went through several shades of red and pale. How did you? Sarah's will? I said simply, she updated it last month. Guess whose name got removed? Apparently. She doesn't approve of people who abandon their mothers for money and then show up again when they need financial help. You turned her against us. Kevin accused. I didn't have to turn her against you. You did that all by yourselves. I walked back to my chair, though this time I stayed standing. Sarah and I talk every week now, have been for the past 3 years. She's the one who suggested I hire investigators when I won the lottery. She told me to protect myself from people who might try to take advantage. You've been planning this? Nora said, her voice flat with realization. Planning what? To be prepared when my estranged son showed up demanding money? Yes, I've been planning that. Because Sarah warned me it would happen. I smiled, and I could see it made them both uncomfortable. She said you'd wait just long enough for the news to spread. Then show up with some story about family and reconciliation. Kevin slumped deeper into the sofa. We need help. Yes, you do. I agreed. You need professional help. Therapy, addiction counseling, financial planning, probably legal representation. I picked up the manila folder again. What you don't need is an enabler willing to throw money at your problems, while you keep making the same destructive choices. So you're just going to let us lose everything? Nora's voice edged toward hysteria. I'm going to let you face the consequences of your own actions like adults. I opened the folder and pulled out another sheet of paper. The paper in my hand contained information that could either save them or destroy them completely. After 13 years of wondering what I'd done wrong as a mother, I finally have the chance to see what kind of people you really are. This, I said, holding up the document, is the contact information for a bankruptcy attorney who specializes in cases like yours. He's expensive, but he's good. He can help you navigate the legal issues you're facing and possibly keep you out of prison. Kevin looked up at me, hope flickering in his eyes. You'd pay for a lawyer? I said he was expensive. I didn't say I'd pay for him. I set the paper carefully on the coffee table between us. You want help, real help? Here's what I'm willing to do. I'll loan you enough money to retain this attorney and enter a debt counseling program. Not $300,000, not enough to maintain your current lifestyle. Just enough to keep you out of jail and give you a clean slate. How much? Nora asked immediately. $25,000. Half for the attorney, half for a legitimate debt consolidation program. I sat down in my chair, finally ready for the most important part of this conversation, but there are conditions. What kind of conditions? First, you both enter therapy. Individual therapy, not couples counseling. You need to figure out how you became people who would con your own families. I held up a finger when Kevin started to protest. Second, you make full restitution to every person you've defrauded. Your relatives, Nora's parents, the clients you may have overcharged everyone. That's impossible. Nora protested. We don't have that kind of money, which brings me to condition 3, I said evenly. You get jobs, real jobs. Not consulting, not entrepreneurship. Not any other scheme that sounds impressive but doesn't pay bills. You get steady employment and you stick with it until every debt is repaid. Kevin stared at me like I'd grown a second head. You're talking about years of work. I'm talking about the rest of your lives, I corrected him. Because that's how long it takes to rebuild trust after you've broken it this badly. And if we don't agree to your conditions? Nora asked. I smiled, and this time it was the kind of smile that made small children hide behind their mothers. Then you walk out of here with nothing. And I make sure everyone in your family knows exactly why. Every relative you've borrowed money from, every friend you've lied to, every person you've conned gets a detailed report about who you really are. You wouldn't. Kevin whispered. Try me, I said. I've had 13 years to think about what I'd do if I ever got the chance. To teach you about consequences. Don't test my resolve now. The clock chimed 4 times. They'd been here for 2 hours. And I could see the exact moment they realized their plan had backfired spectacularly. We need time to think, Nora said finally. No, I said. You need time to choose. You can accept my offer and start rebuilding your lives the hard way. Or you can keep chasing easy money and shortcuts. But you can't do both, and you can't do either one in my house. Kevin looked like he was about to cry. After all these years, after all the pain he'd caused, he suddenly looked like a lost little boy. For just a moment, I almost felt sorry for him, almost. There's one more thing, I said. Just as they started to gather themselves to leave. Something I think you should know before you make your decision. I walked to my desk and pulled out a sealed envelope. The return address was from a law firm in Denver, dated 3 weeks ago. It had arrived right after news of my lottery win started spreading around town. I held the envelope like it contained dynamite. It's from a lawyer, representing someone who's been looking for you. Both for quite some time. The color drained from both their faces simultaneously. Who? Nora whispered. Marcus Williams. I opened the envelope and pulled out the letter. You remember Marcus, don't you? Your former business partner, the one you claimed embezzled from your company. Kevin's hands were shaking now. What does he want? He wants his money back. The $50,000 you took from the company account before you dissolved the partnership. The money he only discovered was missing after his accountant did a full audit following your accusations against him. That's not what happened, Kevin said. But his voice was barely audible, isn't it? I asked softly. According to this letter, Marcus has been working with the district attorney's office to build a case against you. He's been waiting to see if you'd voluntarily come forward and make restitution. I folded the letter carefully. He heard about my lottery win and wondered if it might motivate you to do the right thing. Nora was gripping the arm of the sofa so tightly her knuckles were white. What does that mean? It means Marcus is offering you the same choice I am. You can make full restitution and accept responsibility for what you did. Or he can proceed with pressing criminal charges. I slid the letter back into the envelope. The only difference is that his deadline is tomorrow. Tomorrow? Kevin's voice cracked. Tomorrow. He's given you until 5 p.m. to contact his attorney and arrange payment. I looked between them, watching the last of their composure crumble. So you see, my offer isn't just about family reconciliation or teaching you lessons about consequences. It's about keeping you out of prison. The silence that followed was deafening. I could practically hear their brains working, calculating, trying to find some angle they hadn't considered. You planned this, Nora said finally. You've been in contact with Marcus? I have, I admitted. He reached out to me the day after my lottery win was announced in the paper. He wanted to know if I was aware of what my son had been doing, and whether I might be willing to help clean up his mess. And what did you tell him? Nora pressed. I told him that depended entirely on whether my son was willing to take responsibility for his actions. I stood up and walked to the mantel, picking up that old photo of Kevin at his college graduation. Marcus is a good man. Kevin, he didn't deserve what you did to him. Neither did your Aunt Sarah or Nora's parents or any of the other people you've hurt. Kevin was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I never meant for it to get this bad, but it did get this bad, I said. And now you have to decide what kind of person you want to be going forward. I set the photo down and turned to face them both. You can accept my help and Marcus's mercy, work hard to make things right, and maybe salvage some small piece of your integrity. Or you can keep running, keep lying, keep looking for easy solutions to problems you created. Some choice, Nora muttered. It's the only choice that matters, I said. The choice to be honest. Finally, they looked at each other, and I could see 13 years of bad decisions weighing on their shoulders. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my coffee and the newspaper, waiting. Marcus Williams had given them until 5 p.m., but I had a feeling they'd call much sooner. People facing prison time rarely sleep well. The phone rang at 8:47 a.m. Mom. Kevin's voice, it sounded like he'd been awake all night. We accept your conditions. All of them, both of you? Yes, Nora agrees too. We want to make this right. I set down my coffee cup and leaned back in my chair. Kevin, before I transfer any money or make any calls on your behalf, I need you to answer one question honestly, okay? If I hadn't won the lottery, if I was still just your broke mother living in a small apartment, would you have ever called me? Would you have ever tried to rebuild our relationship? The pause stretched so long, I wondered if the call had been dropped. No, he said finally. Probably not. I was too ashamed of what I'd done, too proud to admit I was wrong, and too scared that you wouldn't forgive me. It was the first completely honest thing he'd said since showing up at my door. It hurt, but it was also exactly what I needed to hear. Thank you for telling me the truth, I said. Now, I have something to tell you. What? I forgive you. Not because you're sorry now. Not because you're in trouble and need help. But because holding on to anger for 13 years was poisoning me more than it was hurting you. I picked up my coffee again, surprised to find my hands were steady. I forgive you, Kevin, but forgiving you doesn't mean trusting you. Trust has to be earned back, and that's going to take time. I understand, do you? Because earning back trust means years of consistent behavior. It means therapy and hard work and proving that you've changed, not just promising that you will. I understand, he said again, and this time I believed him. Good, I'll call the attorney this morning and Marcus this afternoon. You and Nora need to be in their respective offices by the end of business today. I paused, looking out at my garden where the first spring flowers were starting to bloom, and Kevin, yes, this is your last chance. If you mess this up, if you lie again, or try to take shortcuts, or hurt anyone else I care about, you're on your own forever, I know. After I hung up, I sat in my kitchen for a long time, thinking about second chances and the difference between forgiveness and enabling. Some people might say I was being too hard on my son, that family should stick together no matter what. But those people had never spent 13 years wondering what they'd done wrong, never felt the particular pain of being discarded by their own child, never had to rebuild their entire sense of self after being told they were worthless. I'd learned something important in those 13 years. Love without boundaries isn't love at all. It's just fear dressed up in prettier clothes. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from my sister, Sarah, heard through the grapevine that Kevin showed up. How did it go? I typed back, he's getting a second chance. Whether he deserves it remains to be seen. And how are you doing? I looked around my house, my sanctuary. The life I'd built after losing everything I thought mattered. The life where I made my own choices, set my own boundaries, and never again had to beg for a place at a table that should have been mine by right. I'm doing just fine, I typed. Better than fine. I'm free. 2 years later, Kevin would finish paying back every penny he'd stolen. Nora would discover she was actually quite good at managing a small business when she wasn't trying to get rich quick. And I would wake up every morning in my own house, living my own life, finally understanding what it meant to be truly wealthy. It had nothing to do with lottery numbers and everything to do with never again accepting less than I deserved. The money was nice, though. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.